Gentlemen, it's great to have you on stage. And again, we just in the previous panel, we've also talked about public-private partnership. Again, we have public sector and private sector nicely represented, which is exactly how we like it. Raul, maybe you want to take it away. I mean, especially coming from the private sector, the topic of the panel is why governments must lead the change for resilient digital identity. So, how exactly do you see it from your side? And maybe you can share some practical experience from different countries as well. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind introduction. When we talk about identity in its essence, how it's created, how it's built, how it is, well, how it becomes to be, there is only one body in my mind who is allowed to kind of create the identity that everybody should trust, which is the state. The government is the one that is issuing already the identity documents to you, therefore it's the one who decides. Now the question is, what would the identity look like? How does it work? What are the functions? What are the kind of capabilities? And that is where the government becomes the enabler for additional growth, for use cases that are not there for the physical world. And when we talk about authentication methods, digital signatures, etc., this opens up a myriad of different services, different possibilities that can be enabled by the government. And that's why I believe the government is the one to lead the change, especially when it comes down to the electronic usage of the identity.
We've recently seen in the news that more and more countries are in the mid-2020s getting finally on board with the idea of digital identity. We see it in the UK, we see the developments in Switzerland as well, and elsewhere around the world. However, what we also see is that it's being very differently communicated to people what the digital identity actually means. Like, if I remember correctly, in the UK there was the context of, of avoiding benefit fraud and the sort of negativity around the topic, I suppose, and not explaining to the average citizen what their benefits might be. Is this also is this more of a policy question, or is it just a societal change management and sort of communication challenge introducing a good digital identity?
Absolutely, totally agree with it. The UK, with all due kind of respect, these guys...
Kind of respect, yeah.
they messed it up completely this time, as well as previous time as well. So what is now happening is total fear-mongering. These guys have been so scared about the identity-related topics, etc. Having the identity is actually the key. As a government, you are able to provide the service to your citizen, but you have to know who that person is before you can do anything with it. And that kind of a misconception that this is actually for control, that is very badly presented in the case of UK. I also like the equivalent of, I mean, there is a guy called Jeremy Clarkson.
Who's that?
Just a journalist. But he had the saying that without control, the power is meaningless. I kind of like that. And the context of ID, it's all the same. If you put it in the context of identity, it means that you give the government some functions, some ideas, some powers, but you also have to be able to control it. Even though the Estonian government, for example, has quite a lot of information. Now the question is, how is this information being used? Who has the access to it, and what are the benefits for me? After all, who does the data belong to? Does the government own the data, or the subject itself? In case of Estonia, the data is mine. There is also a data tracker, so I can see who has access to my data, and therefore I can be rather confident that this has not been sold to a big American company, for example.
Yeah, very true. Tomas, maybe you can tell us more about your work at the European Commission and how it folds into the area of digital identity as well.
Perfect. Thank you for the floor, Florian, and thanks for having me. Maybe to start with making a statement about digital identities. It should not be seen as a technology, and it should not be seen as just yet another service within the broader ecosystem. But the digital identity needs to be seen as an ecosystem of its own. Of course, building on the technology, because that's the crucial enabler. Perhaps with a lot of organizational measures on top of it, which ensure that the identity is also resilient. But if we go up, we definitely need to focus on the legislative layer as well. Digital identities need to be used somehow by the other services that the state provides. That's the fundamental thing, right? And these digital public services at a national state level usually come with certain legislative mandate. Someone needs to make that service available, someone needs to maintain it, someone needs to monitor the use of the service. And I believe that it is crucially important to make sure that digital identity and the various instruments these digital identities brings nowadays are really made inherent to the fabric of legislation and of policymaking. Now, with this claim that legislation is so important for making a good use of digital identities, let me tell you finally about what I do at the Commission and digital-ready policymaking. What it is, we have been facing a fundamental issue, and it was a huge gap between the policy design stage and the policy implementation. In simple terms, digital implications of laws, when these are not considered already at the design stage, become a firefighting exercise at the end when someone finally has to implement it. The worst case is when someone says, okay, by January 2020 something, there should be a register of documents. But what does it mean, register? What does it mean, documents? What data sets do you process? So all these elements need to be brought into the policy design process. And what we implemented at the Commission in January is a framework that, okay, let's call it an organizational change, because we have fully plugged it into the complicated Commission's legislative workflow. It has 3 relatively simple steps. First is checking whether some proposals or intended proposals already at the planning stage, whether these are digitally relevant, whether they can rely on data, systems, digital public services. And if so, we make sure that we give the policy teams in charge, be it agriculture, transport, whatever, that we give them a proper guidance on how to elaborate on these digital aspects, how to properly describe the data flows to the extent it is possible at the policy design stage, how to describe IT systems needed for the implementation. And here comes the digital identity into play, because we are specifically trying to spot those policy proposals that could benefit from use of European digital identities, notably the EUDI wallet and its instruments like electronic attestation of attributes, and set the right tone within the policy proposals so that this is in the end easily implementable and results in smooth delivery of digital public services. Last point, after we finish with the policy design, we need and require the policy teams to fill in something called digital statement. It's an annex to every new legislative proposal by the Commission, and you can already see it in RLX. It's a nice overview documentation of all digital implications of policy proposals. So this is the relationship between digital-ready policymaking and digital identities, and I realize I speak too much, not very Estonian of me.
All good. Just to the wonderful audience member in the back, that drop sounded quite expensive. I hope it wasn't too expensive. No, I mean, all of your points were very well made and super important, so thank you for expanding on them. Couple of things that you mentioned. First of all, I mean, EIDAS 1 was basically just sort of like here's some ideas, like please follow them, and you don't have to do a digital ID yet if you don't feel like it, that's fine. EIDAS 2 is more, you know, here's the stuff we're going to do together. I remember that, I believe it was the German government that got into trouble in terms of data semantics because the ID card had some stuff that was not really to be expected on an ID card, namely your doctoral title. And all of a sudden, the academic lobby in Germany was upset and up in arms because why can't my ID card say that I have a PhD or professorship anymore? It's deeply, deeply upsetting to all of us. Really, in every person's problem. So I guess the question is, because you're at the European Commission level rather than at the country level, how much can you actually help steer the different member states in a shared direction? I also we keep talking about building ecosystems, also like using the wallet, for example, in both public and private sector. That would be nice. But we see that some countries live this ecosystem thinking, they live this really by example, and some others are sort of like, well, we're going to do government services first, and then maybe one bank joins in a couple of years. How do you make sure that we can sort of uniformly approach this across Europe?
Well,
sorry for that question, that's rude.
No, it's not a rude question at all. I will just do one thing. I will virtually remove my hat of the European Commission and put myself into my old shoes. I used to be in the council representing one of the member states, and during the Czech presidency, I had the pleasure of chairing the body that negotiated the EU DI wallet proposal. Before getting into that position, I was informally testing with some member states how far are they willing to go when it comes to digital identities, and the European legislation actually telling them what to do. And you will not be surprised that the EU does not have great competence when it comes to telling to member states what they do in terms of organization at the national level. Notably, you cannot go there and tell them this and that public service will be digitalized and the digital ID should be used as the entry gate to the digital public service. That's not even possible. So perhaps the approach that has been taken with the EU DI wallet, and I'm not the team that's implementing it now, right? So just recalling my memory of the proposal, this is an approach where you let member states to have whichever solution they see fit in place, but you set the common standard in terms of security. So there needs to be a security standard that national conformity assessment bodies need to take into account before they recognize certain wallet solution. And that's the way to go for the European legislation. In the end, the mandate is to ensure that the final solution will be applicable in the cross-border context, and that everyone can adhere to the same standard, which means we are basically achieving the harmonization in the single digital market. And that's about it. I do not know about better solutions to be applied, although we would all laugh if member states voluntarily adopted just one system and then everything would be interoperable by default. But should this not be the case, and it is not the reality on the ground, we need to go via this way. That means setting common standards.
At the risk of sounding like too much of a radical pan-European, I mean, like if I'm on Facebook or Google or whatever, and I drive from Germany to France to Luxembourg to Belgium, my UX UI doesn't change. The post button is still where the post button is, and the profile is still where the profile is. It's I would hope that we reach a future, especially like with the wallets that you mentioned, where I can expect to use my Estonian wallet also in another country. Yes, that's the whole foundation of that, but also in the same use cases in which I can use it in my home country. So this will be probably the challenge for the next couple of years ahead. But speaking of those opportunities, whether it's in the private or public sector, Raul, can you walk us through what a government ID can do to power a whole ecosystem in a country? You know, whether it's business provided services for banking or other things. This could be the Estonian example, could be another experience. Share your thoughts.
Well, there is technically two sides when it comes down to this kind of walleting, if I can say so. There is a legal value of the thing displayed on your screen. How should I treat it? I mean, if somebody shows me a picture of a document on the screen, should I trust it? The document in physical world, although it's not technically secure, in my book at least, because if a person manages to create a document that looks with all the security elements all there is also another person who can replicate the same thing. Electronic part is, although very different. That one is quite impossible, to be honest. In the future, of course, it takes time and a lot of money, the motivation, but if it's just a picture on the screen, how do you verify this? How do you make sure that this is real? I mean, one of the use cases definitely that they talk about a lot is to buy alcohol or cigarettes from the store. Your age number to be kind of displayed to the merchant. This is definitely one of the use cases, but I think this is probably the most easiest and the boring one, but I would like to go to the realm of authentication and digital signature instead. And that one, well, in case of Estonia, I don't have to be here for anything, literally anything. I can do everything, no matter where I am, up to the from tax declaration up to the voting process. Everything can be done online without being physically present anywhere. And that provides the ability for the state to provide its services to its subjects regardless of the physical location. Really, really good in my mind. And that opens up another kind of chapter in terms of public services provision. And I like that one the most.
Just a quick plug to all the Estonians in the room. We do have local elections coming up, and you can vote online as well. So please do use your vote and your power responsibly, especially with those in mind that do not have the right to vote in local elections. Anyway, myself not included, because EU residents can vote in that election as well. When we talk about the sort of business side and how the private sector can use your digital identity. One of the emerging themes for the last, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, was e-health, right? With the e-prescription. Online banking has been around forever. Do you feel like government, how can you properly engage private sector stakeholders like the banks and so on in making sure that they do use your digital identity once it does go live? Because in Estonia, we've been fortunate that the banks have been basically begging us for a system like that so that they can use it. They've then developed their own thing on top called Smart ID. But how do we make this public-private, not partnership, because you're not buying this system from the private sector, or not in that sense, but making sure that they are using the same systems that you do provide with your national ID? How do we go about it?
Well, there is an interesting fact based on the Estonian experience that a normal person talks to the government about 2 times per year. The same person checks if his or her salary has been deposited on his bank account about 2 times per minute. That's a massive difference. Even though it's using the technology provided by the government, the private sector is actually the driver. And that's where it actually starts to happen. So one thing, of course, is a rather big concern in Europe and the rest of the world as well, is about the amount of information to be provided, and therefore Europeans invented this kind of thing called assurance levels, which is another interesting part of the legacy that is actually already on the market that we now have to deal with. Not Estonians, though. I mean, we already have the highest stone.
High, yeah.
Exactly, we are very high all the time. So,
no elevation, but very high, yes.
Yes, but technically how it works is that if you now go to a supermarket, the loyalty card is now also your ID card. If you go to the library, that's your identity token. If you go to whatever the things, whatever the services you are, doesn't matter, regardless if it's a private or public sector, you can still use the functions of the same identity provided by the government. And that's where it actually starts to live.
I'm going to come back over to you, Tomas, in a second. I've got the same question for, or do you want to add it right now? Do it. What do you want to add?
Let's
okay,
continue.
All right. The question that I was going to raise, because you mentioned level of assurance as well, one of the issues in terms of fragmented digital identity landscape today is sign in with Apple ID, sign in with Google Wallet, blah, 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 blah. What do we do?
Technically, the funny part is that, as far as I know, Japan started to allow their citizens to authenticate to the governmental services using Apple ID. That's a very, very big step in the wrong direction in my book. Even though those big tech companies, they know quite a lot about your identity, but they are still not providers of the official identity. So you can connect them, I don't mind, but actually falling back to the kind of outside system and giving away that monopoly, that the identity creation and the identity document creation, I think it still should remain with the government.
It reminds me of the situation in Scandinavia where Bank ID was created and then the government fell on its own sword and said, all right, you can now log in with Bank ID into public sector portals as well. Tomas, your thoughts?
Maybe to return a little bit back to the private sector use cases, I believe this is crucially important. First of all, you need to incentivize these, and one of the directions the EUDI wallet went was setting a clear distinction when the wallet absolutely must be accepted, and this is done in two ways. The first one is that whenever the so-called strong authentication is required by law, that means LOA level high, then the wallet must be accepted as this means. And the second thing that's really present in the law is that whenever governments want to made it obligatory for certain services to accept whatever national identity mean, the wallet needs to be there as well. But agree to Raul that the private sector incentivization is of absolute importance.
I mean, we've somewhat recently implemented the Estonian government app, and private sector entities are not yet required to accept them, but we're sort of in a demo phase or a pilot phase where you are allowed to accept them if you so wish as a company. And for me, it's been a sort of 50-50 experience. I don't know how the situation has been for you. So like some pharmacies say, yes, absolutely, show me your app, sort of wallet-based identity. Others are saying, well, we're going to do that once we're being required to. What has been your experience in Estonia with this?
Technically, as everything is kind of moving in the direction of the mobile device, in our case, I think it's kind of extension of the state portal, which we already have, to the mobile phone, which is really nice. Although it does not provide you the ability to prove your identity or support your claim of identity in these use cases. I think it's kind of the midway to the wallet part. We will see. But the ideal wallet, in my book, how it looks like, is it has the document representation on the screen, and also allows you to authenticate and sign digitally, which is exactly what it's going to be, right?
Well, there are more functionalities than that. At least as far as I know. Of course, this can be a container where you have the person identification data. It will let you connect to all the trust services, sign, etc., etc., etc. But what's fundamental, in my view, is the new trust service that is called the electronic attestation of attributes, and that basically means that any party that is allowed to do so can verify certain features about yourself. For instance, I don't know, your university diploma, your driving license, your eligibility to enter a library or a gym, if we take it really down to the ground. And these information should be storable within the container and presentable to the relying parties. So in my view, really, what we see as a global trend is the expansion of the digital identity realm. It's no more just person identification data, but it's an additional bunch of services and further opening of the doors for relying parties from the private sector.
Can I oppose to that?
No. Go for it.
I will do it anyway. The main problem that I see with this one is that you build everything on one token, inside one token, technically, the wallet itself, right? You import your driver's license, you import your library card, your diploma, etc. Everything is in one. But what if we create the other way around? You have the key, just the key, to prove that this is you and get the information directly from the source. But I know that I'm a little bit too late with this one because you're already going in that direction. But the idea is that I've seen it already outside Estonia, I mean outside EU as well. They have this kind of weird regions in the world where there is no internet connection at all, some mountainous regions. And these guys are building their ID cards in a way that it contains everything about you. So if you take out the smart card, you can prove that Yes, you had the prescription. Yes, you were in the military. You have been through some training, whatever. This is all on card. And now it seems like EU is trying to do the same thing with the wallet. But I would like to keep it I would like to propose you to keep it as simple as possible so that only the main state-issued documents, such as, you'd say, your ID and your driver's license, maybe perhaps, because this is also a state-issued document, and maybe a representative of your passport, but the rest of the stuff can remain outside. Can we do that instead?
I'm going to disappoint you, Raul. No, this is not in my powers, but I will also explain why this did not happen yet. I mean, the Estonian example is brilliant. You started in the early 2000s, maybe even before you were there when this was made, and the model was really having a simple ID, as you describe it, then having a massive interoperability layer, having a legal layer that says that all the digital public services have to be interoperable and have to communicate that way. And this is the reason why within this federated architecture and fairly decentralized architecture, you don't need to store the data locally in the container in the mobile phone, but you can ask it every single time. The problem with this is that if you want to expand to the cross-border interaction and have this operational at the EU level and not within the borders of a national state, everyone would simply need to adopt the same interoperability layer. And here comes the problem, because there are existing services in member states, and these would have to be massively changed, adjusted in order to be compatible with this interoperability layer, like Xroad, for instance, right? So this is perhaps the reason why you need to build something on top of it so that it is acceptable to those who have quite a lot of services in place.
Can I add one more thing? That is creating another legacy on top of legacy, on top of another legacy that you will have to fight in the future, is it not? Sorry, you don't have to respond to that.
You can reply, of course. Like, I think it's always a good panel if the moderator just gets to shut the hell up, and people are just interrupting or proposing each other solutions or counter responses. Anything you want to add, or I've got one last question. Otherwise,
well, if you show anyone the way how this can be agreed by 27 member states around the table, then I guess I'm going to be voting for this, right? But
I am very happy to come and talk to you and propose this and show how it's done properly.
Next trip, round trip, Brussels and Strasbourg, and back and forth and back and forth.
The eternal dispute between the ideal solution and what is politically agreeable by the 27 around the table, right?
I mean, we've been talking about a union of two speeds in all kinds of topics, whether it's infrastructure build-up or IT. So maybe we can have some leading, trailblazing nations that undertake some experiments first, and others that follow after it's proven to work or not. We'll find out what the future holds. Last but not least, we've got 2 minutes left. The Interoperable Europe Act, can you tell us more about it in 1 minute, and how do you feel about it?
Thank you for the question. This is one of the recently adopted pieces of legislation, and it has one simple goal, to promote better interoperability of digital public services. It has multiple instruments. It even has a governance structure. Member states are now sitting in the Interoperable Europe Board, and they are setting an agenda and all these things. But if there is one thing that I need to highlight about this, it is the new instrument, new kid on the block, that is called interoperability assessments. And in essence, what this is about, whenever as whichever entity that is entitled to set the rules for digital public services, whenever you are setting new rules for these, or you are somehow affecting how the existing digital public services works, you are de facto imposing something called binding requirements. And before you do so, you need to assess what is the effect, obligatory, what is the effect of this newly to be introduced binding requirement on the new or existing digital public services. There is quite leeway how to do that, because we have a wide range of situations that need to be covered. It is different when you are adopting a policy at a member state level, or whether you are, for instance, a municipality and you just set a new digital public services, your own, via procuring, right? So all these situations need to be somehow covered, and the idea is to make people think about interoperability. That is the crucial point. Before we make the decision, we make them think about how this affects interoperability of digital public services.
It is such an immense pleasure hearing somebody with the surname Vagner talk about instruments in the European context. Thank you so much. Parting thoughts, 10 seconds. What do we want for Europe for the next 5 years? Raul.
I would like to kind of go back to the very first opening statement, almost. The very simple thing, very simple concept. The power is dangerous without the control. And one of the control methods are identity. The control means our tools, our mechanisms. So I believe that we are actually on a very, very good path. And I really wish that we can kind of introduce the way of life to the rest of Europe as well, so they can follow the same ideas, the concepts and principles, especially when it comes to data, data ownership, data access, data principles, the identity, same thing, all the same thing. So it would be great. I know it's mission impossible, but we will do our best. Thank you.
Starting with, we will do our best, of course. But no, interoperability is the total key to everything. That's to be kept in mind. Second, digital identity should be seen as an ecosystem that somehow needs to cooperate with digital public services. And my special wish would be for anyone who happens to be in the policy-making area, or even has the powers to influence how policy-making is done procedurally, please think about digital implications of your laws before you adopt them, because this needs to be brought to the process as soon as you start, and you are not supposed to think about digital implications until you are at the very end.
I hope the members of the audience agree with me that that was a very interesting and partially controversial panel as well. Raul, Tomas, thank you so much for your time. Please join me in giving you a hand of applause. Thank you.